Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Yasmine, Mohammed, and I have recently talked and agreed that we should host a series of conversations with people that are, in a way, survivors of a very real form of Islam, who have lived Islam through to a certain extent, who got married to people who were Islamists or who were very serious Muslims, who have lived in the Islamic world, who have lived with Islam, and similarly, people who have made their experience with Islam. Yasmine thought, and I thought, it would be very interesting and very significant to bring real life experiences to everybody instead of just me talking about these matters as I always do. And I thought it would really be an honor to have Yasmine here with me, who has made life experiences herself. Very serious life experiences, and has also written a book about that. We have our first guest today, Deborah. I don't want to talk too much about this. I want to give the word to Yasmine from here and let her tell us more about what we are going to do. Yasmine.
All right. Thank you very much, Ridwan. I really appreciate you giving us a platform to have this conversation. I'm really excited about talking with Deb about her experience. Her and I have a lot of similarities. She's read my book, and she felt that she lived a lot of the similar things that I lived through, even though obviously she's from a very different culture than what I'm from, because that seems to be the common thing is, oh, that was just your culture. It has nothing to do with Islam. So obviously we know that that's a fallacy, but Deb is here to talk to us about her experience in Islam that has absolutely nothing to do with her culture. So what really interested me in inviting Deb to this conversation was learning that she was married to a member of Hizb ut-Tahrir, who was actually recruited by our friend Majid Nawaz. I'm sure Majid feels a lot of guilt about that and regrets it dearly. But Deb, I'd like you to take us through the steps of how did that even happen? So start off with like young Deb before you even met him. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, and then if you could launch into just meeting him for the first time and how you got wrapped up in this web.
Right. So my background is Mennonite. So my parents emigrated here. So we're kind of first generation. We weren't raised like the Mennonites, although my parents lived there without electricity and all that. Very religious though. We still like adhere to all the beliefs. So I grew up quite religious and like fearing hell and believing in heaven and all that. I always had a lot of resentment towards the way they treated children and women in particular. And I didn't even know why, but because I was the only girl in my family, I have 3 brothers. I noticed just the different dynamic, just even in extended family, in my family. And it was just the way it was. You just have to accept it. So to me, it was like, I didn't like it, but I didn't really know why. It's just because it's just the way. And
sounds like you were prepped to become a Muslim, because that sounds like me.
Yeah, exactly. Women have their place, the submissive wife, and you have your children, lots of children. And so as I became older, though, I wanted to go to Bible college so I could learn more about what you're putting your whole life into. And it was in Bible college where I actually stopped believing in the Bible because I was taught like how it was actually compiled. Like it wasn't just a magic book. It was like, wow, they found all these things and somebody decided which ones to put in there and which ones not, and let's adjust it. So that really just threw me off. I quit after a year, and I kind of was atheist, more just like not Christian anymore, just not knowing much. And
do you mind if I interject for a second? How did your parents, did you share with them that your belief has been shaken, and how did they react?
The thing with Mennonites is they really don't like education. So with Mennonites, they stop education at grade 6. So they just blame my doubts on, I just learned too much now. So it was like, nothing makes sense with, just blind faith.
But they didn't respond to you in an
No, they
aggressive
didn't like
manner
it.
in any way.
They didn't like it. They just thought, she's gonna come back around, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was, I guess, almost set up for like embracing Islam after that, because I was just like kind of lost and just wandering around trying to figure out and trying many things. And I was briefly married to an atheist, and we just, it just didn't work. It was just like a practice marriage almost. And then when I met my ex, he was giving talks at the local university, doing debates about the Iraq war, because it was now when Bush was being reelected. So there was so much political talk, everyone knows. So I found that, of course, fascinating, because here, he's so educated. And the thing with this group is everybody is the same. They all speak the same. They all, you can tell if somebody's a member. They all have the same way of speaking. They're well educated. They're just trained to look at Islam intellectually. So now you're not approaching it like a religion. It's not just some religion. You're actually taking current events that are happening, and now we're analyzing it in the right way. The West is doing this to the countries, and this is why the Muslims are reacting this way. So basically, you're taught or told that ever since, I guess, the end of World War I, when the West destroyed the Khilafah and broke up everything into small countries, it's just been an endless campaign to prevent the Khilafah from ever coming back. So when you take it that way, you can kind of twist every event to kind of, you know what I'm saying? Go that way?
Yes, I am. And so the Hizb ut-Tahrir are a group of Islamists similar to the Muslim Brotherhood, and their aim is to what?
Their aim is to reestablish the Islamic State. Their only difference from other groups is that it's through nonviolence. Their way is we're just spreading ideas, and ultimately they really want to find a big army like Pakistan or somebody, which they really think they're pretty religious, I guess, get a whole army to now stage a coup, and that's how they plan on taking over a country and starting up the Islamic State. Now, when places like ISIS, and there's always small little khilafahs that pop up here and there, it's just us as the Hizb would never go and move there and support it, because they didn't do it through the right method, the way
they did it through violence.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so laid out. They have hundreds of books to go through, and they have a full constitution written out, ready to go, a full economic system ready to go.
All of this is transparent. They're not hiding this.
Instant. It's right there. You can I just was looking it up. You can, so they're just waiting for the second they can get in, they have everything.
So for people's clarification, so it is the same issue. The end goal is the same. They want to establish an Islamic caliphate, just like other violent organizations. But the only difference is that they say we shouldn't initially do this with more violence. We should do this politically and intellectually in order to then establish a violent caliphate.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So was this the conversation he was having at the university that attracted you to him?
No, it was more because I was against the war. I was very liberal, very liberal. So you're what are we doing? We're hurting these people, and they're just so peaceful. And the whole 9/11 conspiracy. It's just it just makes more sense. And then also.
So he's not when he's having these talks in the university, he's not actively saying that he wants to make an Islamic caliphate. He's instead coming at it from things that he knows that you'll relate to, and that people in basically liberal Western liberals, things that they will relate to and appreciate. And it's kind of like in Egypt we call that simma fil asa. That's what the Muslim Brotherhood did. They pretend to be your friend by building schools and building hospitals and saying what they think you want to hear. Yeah. But in actuality, they're trying to establish a caliphate. They're trying to spread their message and create what they want to create. But, someone like Linda Sarsour is a perfect example, right? She'll use the left progressive speech to get herself, just basically her tentacles into, there's a video of her talking about a new American congressperson that just got elected. And she's like, he's going to need to listen, just sit down and pay attention. And what we tell him to do, he's just going to have to do it. And she's just saying this on a video. Like, they're very transparent about what they want and how they, what their aims, what their goals are. But they do it in a very subversive way. So when he was doing these talks, you were hearing him talk about peace and love, and we don't want to have wars with the Iraqis. Okay,
right. It was, and they don't really hide what their goals are either. But they present it in a way that it's the ultimate solution. Like all of our problems here in the West, like women being raped all the time, and everything, homelessness, every problem that you can think of. Islam has like a beautiful solution, and if only everyone would do it, it would be perfect, right? So
I guess the issue with Hizb ut-Tahrir is that more than sugarcoating like many other groups that we see. For example, I just want to bring up an example from myself. I grew up within a movement, an Islamic movement that from the outside looks extremely peaceful. We are in Europe, for example, and in Europe we would be called just a peaceful, very religious group that sticks to itself. But inside we would learn that
Sufis are considered more spiritual than political.
And we would learn about the love of Allah and how to get closer to Him through suffering and all kinds of nonsense like that. But inside, we also learn very politically that the only reason we are not fighting right now is that the time hasn't come and the circumstances haven't been set, haven't been met yet. So we just need to hold on to our faith and wait for the circumstances to arise so that we can take up the weapons, the arms, and can go to war.
We're also ready to fight.
No, they are very much.
So is it the Ahmadis that are the only ones that kind of removed all the jihad out of there? Or
I would even say it's not even fundamentally to them a quality to be necessarily peaceful. It's just also a means, a bridge to them in a way.
Wow.
But with Hizb ut-Tahrir, we have it's like they are more open about how an Islamic caliphate needs to be established, but they are more they try to approach it very reasonably.
Right. So they do many talks in mosques and to Muslims to explain how the Prophet did it, how he brought about the Islamic State, and they try to emulate that exact. So like he did this, and then we do that. So it's spreading of ideas first, and then we do this, and they're basically like we're
the violence happens because that's how the Prophet did it.
Yep. So that's how they got their method. They're like, because we're doing it the right way. Because so then if we do it this way, then it will be the right khilafah, like the real one. Okay.
Okay, well, take me back to you, a young girl going into a university auditorium and hearing a charismatic man speaking. Talk to me about how your relationship evolved.
So I met him and I was attracted to him, and he basically, I don't know, it was just like, we liked each other, and he started saying with Islam, like, there's no dating, and if you want to marry me, we could and it was just like more like, ooh, he wants to marry me like right now. It was like, that whole like funny, but seriously, I was just like, well, that's interesting, and I will go look into it because I didn't really know much about the religion itself. So I had his like email and stuff, and it was like, I forget what messenger we used to use back then. But when I went and researched Islam, it was basically all the problems I had with Christianity. It was like they had the answer for all of them. So it was just kind of like, wow. So it was easy. And so when I told him, it was just, well, you're a Muslim now. I said the Shahada, and he was like, let's get married for real. And then I moved to another city, which was far from where I was. So I right away was segregated, and I could start change my life drastically without any problems, because now I'm among really religious Muslims only.
Separated from your friends and family
Yeah.
and community.
And we didn't tell anybody. I was terrified to tell my family.
How much did you know about that before that happened? Like, how much did you know? How much did you know that your life would change that much, that drastically before it actually happened?
So in my mind, so it sounds insane. I'm like, get up and move and marry this guy. In my mind, it was, okay, so I'm just gonna go basically move in with this guy I like and have this like religious wedding, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just move out. It was kind of like, I'm just kind of moving with a guy.
Yeah,
in my mind, it was kind of like not so crazy in that way.
Yeah.
And another way, I was going to finally like learn about this new religion I just joined as well. So, and it was like strange. We had a wedding in his friend's house, and it was strange. Like this,
was it segregated, men and women in separate places?
Yeah, it was segregated. This sister came to sit with me, and she was like just beaming at how amazing I was that I accepted this religion. And she was so young and innocent, and I was just like, I didn't know what to do. It took hours, so I was so exhausted by the end of it. I didn't know what was going on. It was these strange traditions and rituals. And then his friend, I guess you have to have a mahram, and if your dad isn't there, he picks one for you. So this guy I didn't know.
Your parents not there because you didn't tell them?
I didn't tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Just a clarification, mahram is a guardian of a woman.
Yeah. So this guy was almost acting as my father to give me away to him. So I met him, and it was really awkward. And then he explained to me too, he goes, do you know that he's part of this group that could possibly land him in jail one day? So he did give me that, because he was also in this group, and everybody there was also in this group, actually, everybody that was there. So I was like, oh, okay. Because I knew that, like, I went to these things, I already heard the stuff. And to me, I'm just like, like, it's nonviolent though. So they're not violent, they just talk. So it was, again, you can justify it. Again, they're peaceful, they're not violent.
So at that point, you didn't know that their aim was to eventually be violent, but they're just going to be peaceful at the beginning. You didn't know that yet.
Right. And so when you think of that, you just think, well, that's really something that will just never happen. Like in my lifetime, it's just like, it's never happened, and then the not without my daughter thing, that's just an exaggeration, propaganda against this religion again. And so you go in totally rejecting any warnings or red flags that you would have even seen. So again, I don't understand why this religion in particular is so defended when there's so many things that break laws and human rights, like, all the time.
That's the question. I think it's really important for you especially to be speaking out right now, though, because I have so many women that write to me that are like you, born and raised somewhere in the West, have not ever been Muslim or exposed to Islam, and that are caught up in love with some man who does not share the truth with them. And they do kind of sense these little red flags, but they're denying them because they love him and because he's telling her it's going to be okay and it's going to be different for her. And the line that they always love to tell women like you is, Muslim men are allowed to marry non-Muslim women, so you're under no obligation to convert.
That's another thing. Again, that was another thing. It's like, I don't have to do it.
But of course,
meanwhile, like, I was
expected later,
wearing all black abaya and hijab and sleeves and pants and everything within a day. And it was just like basically headfirst into that lifestyle and praying and learning Arabic. And so you're so caught up in learning all the rituals and learning this language that you've never seen before even. You can't even think about anything else anymore. And I got pregnant right away. So then we were like, okay, now we got to take this seriously. Like, we're pregnant. So then I wasn't, so that throwaway boyfriend thing is gone now. So now I'm going to take this seriously and now adhere to this religion seriously. So I kind of bought into it at that point. But then, you know, with being pregnant, and after that I was pregnant and breastfeeding for the next 10 years straight, like nonstop. It was just, so you get that on top of everything else. I had like no sleep for like 10 years.
So you don't even have the option to go back. I mean at first it is just, you just want to explore something,
so
because it seems exciting, but then you're right into it and there is no going back anymore, because you're too deep into it. Do you think it has to do with I mean it's kind of a I don't know if it's kind of a cliche, but there is a lot of truth to it, I would say. But do you think it has you finding yourself in that relationship and being attracted to Islam, to an Islamist person, do you think that has a little bit something to do with your background, the fact that you have left the Mennonite background behind, and you started seeking, you were like in kind of a
it's familiar.
Yeah, like it was a sort of rebellion, but also something familiar.
You feel like when you feel so lost, when especially with Islam, like every single thing is dictated to you. So that is like comforting when, you know, even with Christianity, if you're trying to be very religious, like there's so much open to interpretation. You're still not sure if you're doing the right thing. Like to me, when I was in Bible college, I really thought Mother Teresa was like the epitome of what the Bible tells you to be. I was like, if you really want to be that person. So Islam, it was comforting to me that like, if you want to be a Muslim, you do all these things and it's like easy. Like, how do you breathe? How do you eat? How do you, like, even just going to somebody's house, if you look in their window, you get these insane punishment of like, it's as if the whole house comes down on you if you look into somebody's house, like things like that. So when things like that are constantly going through your mind,
you have no time to think. Your brain is filled up.
You can't, you're not objective anymore. You're really not.
You're just a cyborg. You're just, every single step of the day is laid out for you, and you must step in this specific direction in this way, right foot first, right? There's never any opportunity for you to use your brain or to think or to interpret or to question. That's just not an option. It's really hard to explain to somebody unless they've been in a cult. It's really hard for them to understand that indoctrination. Like, it'd be really difficult for them to understand, how does a free woman like you get caught up in being married to an Islamist and, you know, having child after child? Like, how does that happen? It's a very slow boil. And it's
when you're separated from everyone too. It's so easy when everyone's doing what you're doing. It's very easy. As soon as you start, and that's where things got hard for me, is trying to live in the outside world at the same time. That friction caused such a breakdown at the end that I just,
that's why they minimize your interaction with the outside world as much as possible, so that you don't have that.
Right. And I was told by other sisters that, you know, and that's why women need to stay indoors.
Yes.
And that's the wisdom of Allah.
Wow.
That's why you should be indoors. Like, you shouldn't be out working, or like, what's wrong with you? Why are you talking to that man? You know, just,
that's why you have to not see anything, not hear anything, not leave the house, just like be completely separated, you know, might as well be 6 feet under, because that way there will be no problems, then there will be peace.
Exactly.
So when did you start?
Heaven's under the mother's feet. So me staying home being a mother, that's all I have to do. Like, that's all. I did have a lot of pressure to do hizb work, because the thing with the hizb is when you start working and learning their, I guess you start taking a halakha, and you don't become a member right away.
Sorry, just if you could tell people about what a halakha is, a study group.
Okay. But it's very official, and as soon as you start learning it, you have to start teaching it because that's how you learn the best. And you're not allowed to write anything down. You have to take it all to memory. And you have to redo books over and over until you almost have it memorized, like their wording on exactly how to say it in their wording. And so again, so you have Islam's already their robotic way of doing things. This is the same idea
And then
in their way. And they have like weekly halakas that are 2 hours long, and they're late at night always. And it's just.
Are you guys joining the regular mosques like that I would have gone to?
So they're Sunni mosques. They'll go to Sunni mosques only. Sometimes mosques will kick them out if they find out that they're trying to do things there.
So that's not where you had your halakas, were not in a mosque?
No, they're usually at somebody's house. No, so they will try to do Friday khutbahs a lot of times to get into places. So they'll do khutbahs at MSAs all the time and different Islamic schools. You want to get exposure to all the youth that are fired up about the political situation. So when you get Muslim youth who's fired up about the wars that's going on, and then you have this group like the Hizb that has all of those concerns and then answers for them, it's very appealing to these young men, especially that want to do something.
So a lot of recruitment going on in colleges and universities across Canada. I don't know if we mentioned that you're in Canada, but across Canada, across the US, we know from Majid, across the UK, obviously all across Europe. So that's where they're going. They're going to colleges and universities, recruiting students in Muslim student associations. And then in your case, it wasn't even a Muslim student association where you heard him. You just heard him in a regular.
No, he was just speaking there, and he was living in the town I was living in. So for just briefly, he had just moved from the UK, so he was.
Is he still actively recruiting or speaking?
Sorry?
Is he still actively speaking and recruiting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you have to. Like you have to. Like if you're a member, like, and you're not doing anything, they'll kick you out. Like you are very obligated to work.
Okay, I want to quickly clarify the distinction or the significance of Hizb ut-Tahrir. So in the Islamic community, correct me if you want to add anything, if I miss anything, Muslims are traditionally obligated to establish Islamic law. So as long as Muslims exist in a community, they are supposed to follow Islamic law, not only personally, but also as a community. So if they establish a state, a leadership, it has to be Islamic. Now, many Muslim nations and communities today in the world still think that they should follow Islamic laws, even many that live in secular countries. So on average, the majority of Muslims want to follow Islamic law. Where the disagreement starts is that there is no caliphate nowadays, because the last caliphate was destroyed by the secular Turks at the beginning of the last century. But groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir and many other groups, groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir and many others want to re-establish that caliphate again, because according to Islam, it is not only an obligation to establish Islamic law in an Islamic state, but it's also an obligation to declare a caliph and to follow that caliph, because Muslims, as long as they exist, are, according to Islamic scholarly consensus, obligated to have one leadership and spread Islam under that leadership militarily and diplomatically and in every other way.
Yeah.
So when groups like ISIS, for example, go out and want to establish this caliphate violently, groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir want to establish this caliphate in a more intellectual or diplomatic way. But in the end, what they want to do is to establish an Islamic caliphate, no matter how many groups there are, no matter how much they differ. And the end result of that Islamic caliphate is, again, to go out there and to continue the conquest of the world and to spread Islam to every single person that is out there, as long as humans exist.
And
Just wanted
so,
to clarify.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. Because when we say these kinds of things, Deb, people think that we are being Alex Jones about it. They think that we are exaggerating. They think that this is a conspiracy theory because it's not their experience, and they don't have any, knowledge about it. They have no points of reference. And so it just sounds like crazy talk to them.
Yeah.
So but this is all, like you said, it's documented. They're transparent about it. This is the first I've heard, actually, when you just mentioned that there are certain things that you can't write down, you can only speak about. And I suspect that's because you were in Canada and because they were afraid that the authorities might.
I just know it's a rule across the board. Like you can't take notes ever for this. Like they'll give you their books but that's it. Like you have your books.
Interesting.
I mean, I grew up in a similar community where it was a general rule where everyone knew the rule that that certain things are only spoken, not written down.
Well, it's making sure you have it committed to memory, and they test you on it. I mean, if you want to become a member, like you have the senior members like really drilling you and making sure you answer the right way and are doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. I never became a member. I was being pressured to the whole time. I was just saying, look, I'm having kids all the time. Like, how do I fit? And then if I have to start becoming a member, now I have to go find sisters to now do the same thing with, and they're all having babies. So I don't know how.
It's like a pyramid scheme. You have to get in it and then recruit others, and
you have
they
to.
recruit others.
So the way they I guess the way they explain it to Muslims is that being a Muslim, we are only able to practice a third of Islam without a khilafah. So we're literally sinning right now without having one. So if we don't try to establish it, then we're sinful for not at least trying. Because a lot of Muslims, they're like, yeah, Allah says there will be a khilafah at the end. So they're just waiting for it magically to happen. And so the Hizb argues, no, we have to do something.
Actively make it happen.
So that's another way to get people to join.
This is so strange. I don't know how to explain the details of this without without it sounding problematic, because there are certain other groups that are active in our time that very clearly teach that as long as two people exist, or as long as two Muslims exist, they must declare one of them a caliph, and then they must violently fight off anybody else who challenges that claim. So it's kind of it follows the same pattern that although it is not violent, it is still an obligation, and as long as you don't do it, you are being sinful, because you're not truly following the expectations of Islam and the obligations of it. So
a military coup just leads to, it would just be insane violence right after that. Like it's just because they convinced some army to go ahead and do this for them. It's going to become bloody instantly right after that. But they didn't care. Like they adamantly defend all of the punishments that will come after, the cutting the hand, the everything, throwing gay people off of a cliff. Like everything is just, they're like, yeah, of course. Oh, and slavery, of course. But it's not, it's merciful slavery. It's not the same as what we are taught in history. It's, it's when
the slaves like it. They're happy.
God decrees it. It's merciful and wonderful. So,
I recently talked to an Islamist who said something like, who was really rationalizing here, sitting down with me, and who was saying, well, if you compare the historical concept of wage labor is actually the same as slavery. And actually slavery is better, because with a wage labor, you just rent people, whereas with slavery, you own people, and you better take care of something that you own than what you rent. So that was the reasoning. So that's how we justify Islamic slavery. By the way, you forgot to mention the killing of apostates. I think we should always honor that one.
That's another one. He actually literally did some talks about that, because I think there was about 5-6 years ago, there was like a issue. Somebody killed an apostate in Afghanistan or something, and it was worldwide news. So he went out and did some talks about it. And I had a big problem. I had many discussions with him about it, because somebody, Allah will take care of them, like that's how, why are we? But then again, well, it's merciful, because we will take him and talk to him and try to convince him first. We're not just going to kill him.
He has 3 days.
It's merciful. It's like, just like prosecution in Islam, like you need 4 witnesses in order to prosecute.
Or rape.
Women, but 4 men. I guess.
Yeah, it has to be men, of course. So I want to get into more of your personal story, but there's so much that I want to ask you about Hizb ut-Tahrir. So before I get into what was your relationship with your family? What was it like wearing hijab? When did you start to doubt? All of those things. I just want to ask one question that popped into my mind. So when I was growing up, I was taught that we shouldn't vote because we are living in a non-Muslim country and this is a non-Islamic government. So vote, they're a fake government. They're not real. They're not legitimate. They don't follow Sharia. So we shouldn't vote.
Yeah.
Was that similar for you with Hizb? same thing.
They're outside of the mosques, like no voting every time there's an election.
Yeah.
You're
So it's
you're
interesting.
voting for a kufar to implement kufr. That's what we were
Yes,
told.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's
And I
not
think that's an important thing for people to hear, because politicians pander to Muslims. Obviously, you know this being a Canadian, how much they pander to Muslims. And it's like, you're wasting your time, buddy, because they're not going to vote for you. They're not going to vote for you because at the end of the day, you're a kafir. And this is a government of kuffar. And so pander all you want. They're going to get everything they want out of you, and they're still not going to vote for your sorry ass. So just going to take it to a little bit of a Canadian context for just a little bit, because I don't know how many Canadian viewers we have that are interested, but this is something that would be across the board anyway, because Hizb ut-Tahrir are universal, like they're global. Yeah. And same thing with Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamist groups. But in the Canadian government, I have recently learned not only do we have Islamists in our liberal government, but we have them in our conservative government as well. Can you speak on that?
I noticed the last time I voted, actually, every single person on the ballot in every party was a Muslim. It was like, I was looking, I'm like, wow. But to me, that meant nothing, because according to Hizb, that is completely useless. So I've never considered that to really impact anything until you and I had we had that conversation recently about little things that can be changed through having Muslims in government, where like these Islamophobia laws, or not being able to prosecute polygamy, or anything. I mean,
they're getting what they want.
Don't Mormons get prosecuted for polygamy in Canada?
Yeah, everybody does except for Muslims.
Except Muslims. And I mean, I was part of polygamy. I have so many friends that are in it, and you tell the authorities and they're just like.
So when you say you saw a bunch of Muslim names on the ballot and it didn't concern you, why wouldn't it concern you that people that want to create a caliphate are getting themselves into the government of a secular country? Why is that not concerning to you?
Well, I was taught, like, according to the Hizb's view, is that once you basically sign up to a Kafir government, you've kind of sold out already. So you're useless, and you'll have no influence. Like, you're kind of like, you've basically sold your soul, and you're like, so I guess I still just saw it that way. I'm like, they think they can do something, but there's nothing you can do.
So when you say do something, and when you say concerning, you're speaking about from the perspective of a Hizb ut-Tahrir woman.
Exactly. Exactly. That's just the way
I understand. Okay. I thought you were speaking like as Deborah.
Believe me.
Okay, so as a Hizb ut-Tahrir woman, you're like, oh, well, they're never going to be able to establish the caliphate in Canada, so that's not really useful.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's not going to do anything.
All right, but from their perspective, they may not necessarily. I think it's sort of
the long game.
It's the long game.
It's like a con artist. They play the long game. It's a very long game, but obviously, when the end goal is so glorious, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. So anyway, let's bring it back to your personal story. Can you tell us about what it was like for you putting hijab on? How did your family react to that? How was your relationship with them and with their grandkids? All that kind of stuff. And then when did you start to doubt the religion?
So I started wearing hijab pretty much right away. And I guess when you're among everyone that does the same thing as you, it's like, it's easy. Like, it's like, wow, this is like, so, you're comparing yourself to Mary, like Jesus's mother, like, wow, we're being so pious and we're praying all the time. And I mean, converts are so revered. I mean, I was even asked by like an MSA in a university to start a women's study group.
And I just interrupt for a second. MSA is a Muslim Student Association.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was asked to speak once a week and teach them about Islam. And I had just been Muslim for like a month. It was just, that's how great it was. Yeah. So you're riding this high. I mean, I'm learning that what this group is like, kind of like a activist group. So it's kind of exciting too. So you get these liberal activists that are also part of this group. So we go to these like rallies and stuff.
I just want to say something very quickly. I mean, you just mentioned how you just converted to Islam and you were very revered as a convert, and they immediately wanted you to speak and to speak to other Muslims about Islam and to teach Islam. It's very funny to me. I often point this out, but first off, converts, especially white people, especially white women, are extremely revered in the Islamic community. If you are a convert, if you just converted, you are like, everybody's attention is on you. But another thing is, when we, as people who have lived and practiced Islam for decades, for so many years, come out and speak about Islam, the objection that we receive from the average Muslim is, well, obviously they don't know anything about Islam. They're completely ignorant. They left for their desires and this and that. But yet, when you convert to Islam, and even if you don't know anything, they just use your convert status to imply that you are an authority and that you converted because you are wise and that you have so many great things to say about it. It's
because I chose that voluntarily. It makes me that great. I don't know why it was so weird, but so yeah, you have many things that like it's exciting at first, and then also you're given all these books about like women in Islam and all the women's rights in Islam. So you're just like bombarded with like, you know, now you're free, your men will look at your face instead of your body, and then they won't objectify you anymore. It's just so many things that you just tell yourself all the time.
That's the whole purpose of the fucking thing, is because you are being objectified.
I know, but you know, honestly, when you're just repeating the things to yourself, it's just how it is. It's so funny, like now when you look at it. But again, but when you're living here, it's different. Now, if I would be in a Muslim country, you see how hijabis are actually really disrespected by men. Like they're treated like garbage.
Absolutely.
Like I work in an office and there's Muslims, and they told me that if I had been a hijabi as a receptionist, I would be disrespected by the Muslims that come in instead of not wearing hijab. But you'd think as a Muslim woman putting it on, now people are going to honor you and respect you more. It's like not.
But those are just cover slogans. I mean, there is a sorry, Yasmine, I didn't.
No, I was just going to say that men being brought up to think of a woman as lesser than, it doesn't matter if she's covered or not covered. That you're still going to be disrespected. He's still going to see you as subordinate, subservient, lesser than. But the difference is when you are wearing hijab, he will see her as part of his group or part of his community, or, you know, someone who he could get in trouble for being flirty with or something. But he'll see you as someone who it's safe for him to, you know, maybe he has a chance with you, right? So he's going to try and be nice to you and be polite to you, and something could come of it. But there is a reverence of just white skin in general. I mean, it's in the religion. So even white slaves cost more than black slaves. And when the sex slavery was going on, it was all about white meat. It was all about white women. That's why women. So you'll see this in the paintings, right? Like when they have the history of this, when they talk about the Hurul Ain, the sex slaves, essentially.
They have the lightest skin.
They have skin so light you can see their veins, right?
Yeah. Somehow that's like attractive.
That's the level of beauty. So
in the Ottoman Empire, we had this thing, but still until the early 1900s in the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, in the middle of Istanbul, there was still a huge slave trade going on, and the women that were bought and sold there, the most valuable of the women that you could buy on that market were white women, who were Caucasian or European women. There was a known thing, like a white woman was the most valuable thing. That was like white meat, you know.
I mean, this was literally what my family told me. So my grandmother is Turkish. My family is Egyptian, Sudanese, like, you know, all sorts of different African mixes in there. And because my family were like of a upper, you know, high class family, my mom's great uncle was the first president of Egypt. So her dad had the opportunity to marry whoever he wanted. So of course, what does he want? He wants a white woman. And the white women that were available, Muslim, has to be a Muslim, of course. So that's why he got a woman from Turkey who didn't even speak the same language as him. The poor woman came into Egypt and just like you, had child after child after child after child, 7 children. He also married 2 other women.
Wow.
Like, treated her like garbage, brought her out of the country that she was born and raised in into a country where she knew nobody and didn't speak the language. But the thing is she was an item. She was a commodity. She was a thing of value because she had white skin, and he could bring her in and have her like as his trophy in a country where most of the women had much darker skin.
And have lighter skinned offspring with her as well.
Exactly. Yeah. But not that they even really care about the offspring part.
Oh,
they just really care about like the trophy wife.
Yeah. Regarding the value of women, since you brought it up earlier about how when you're covered up and when you are a Muslim woman, you are actually more valued, and how Islam holds women in very high regard. Yeah. I find it very funny. I keep remembering the farewell sermon, which Muslims love to so often mention. And what they do is, especially in more moderate Muslim cultures, especially if they talk to Western people, there are certain versions of the farewell sermon, and some are less authentic than others. And in the most popular versions, Muhammad actually says, and these words are often left out by Muslims who love to mention how beautiful the farewell sermon was. But Muhammad actually says in that women are given to men as captives by Allah. Mm-hmm. They usually choose a little bit more appealing words when they translate that to modern languages, and it says that
it's a possession, essentially.
Yeah, as a possession, as a temporary possession on earth. Men are allowed to have sex with them, and the women are supposed to keep their house safe from the people that men don't want in the house. That is their obligation, and that's a man's right over the woman. To have her, to be in possession of her, to have sex with her, and to have her keep people out that the man doesn't want in the house. The woman's right here over the man is that he feeds her and gives her clothes. That's what the thing say, what the hadith says.
Like a puppy.
Yeah.
My ex brought that up many times of his obligations to me, food and clothing.
So that is the value of women
for
in
not
Islam.
Providing properly. It was you have a roof over your head and you have clothing. So
literally like a dog.
Yeah.
He has fed you and keeps a roof over your head. So that's it. Just go to the corner and sleep on your mat.
The thing that I've noticed is basically no matter how non-religious Muslims are, even when I have friends that marry Muslims that don't practice, but they still marry them, they still do the mahar where they give a dowry. So you're basically naming a price for him to purchase you. And you see just that dynamic.
He doesn't purchase you from you. He purchases you
that
from
relationship is now kind of shifted to that, where the man is owning you now and he tells you what to do. And it's just, it's weird how you see it happening and they just get stuck in it. I don't know.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the hijab thing that you mentioned too, because you were saying that you felt that men were treating you differently when you are wearing hijab versus not wearing hijab. Talk to me about when you were wearing hijab and how pious you felt and how you felt. I'm assuming you felt superior to other women that did not wear hijab. You felt like a more pious person.
Yeah. So you now see, people as Muslim and non-Muslim. So kufar, and now you're part of this ummah, which is the family of Islam. So now you're part of this new family. And so mostly the judgment was Muslims that wasn't wearing the hijab. It's like, better, and, you're not doing it. So it was non-Muslims, they're not guided by Allah, right? Because I was so honored that Allah guided me to this great real intellectual Islam that made more sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
You just now see the world in that way.
Yeah. But the slut shaming of other hijabi women was a constant, right? Like it was.
Yeah. Oh, and if I had any friends that like didn't wear the proper hijab, and like even if they wore pants, if I wasn't correcting them every time I saw them, I wasn't allowed to hang out with them. It was like, you'll be raised on the day of judgment with those that you sat with, right? There's that hadith. So it was I had a friend who wore pants. She was my next door neighbor. We were great friends. And I was always getting in trouble because I never brought it up to her or tried to correct her. And he did it in front of me to her. And it was like the most mortifying situation I was ever like part of, where he was like reprimanding my friend in front of me because I didn't do it, like because I failed to do it. It was just so awkward.
Man.
Did you have another question, Ridvan? I feel like I keep on asking all of them.
No, I feel like I think this is more in the. I have some questions on how this all ended, but I guess you're going on with more questions right now. So
yeah.
So tell me about the process for you. So you did mention that you're part of a polygamous relationship. So now talk to me about the marriage. So now you're married, you're wearing hijab, you are, you've drank the Kool-Aid essentially. Yeah. You're totally on board with the idea of the caliphate. When did the doubts start to creep in? Does it have something to do with him taking on?
I wanted to ask that.
Yeah.
It was.
Tell me how that conversation went. How did the conversation go for him to tell you, "Hey, Deb,
Munira." I was Munira.
Oh yeah, that's right. Hey, Munira, I want to marry another woman as well as you. You cool with that?
That started right after we got married.
Oh, wow.
You need to know that I plan on having more than one wife because that's what the Prophet did. And, just have that in your mind. And if you have any objections to that, there's something wrong with the way you're thinking because you're not pious. Like you're not religious enough. Like if you don't accept God's rules, like literally you're not accepting God. You're not accepting Islam. So I had to just, I guess. And I studied it to the point where I had to embrace it. Like, okay, so, I watched Sister Wives. I watched all the Sister Wives to pump myself up to like, okay, I can be friends. I'm going to try to like do it, and reading the stories about the wives of the Prophet, like some of them were friends and, they got jealous of each other. So it's okay to have jealousy. And, you just do these things. And when it actually came down to where he found somebody to marry and it was going to happen in a week, it was so funny because you're praying every time you feel an emotion, you're praying for help. You can't really go to people because now you don't know if you're talking bad about your husband. So
you already had kids at this point, right? Yeah, you got pregnant.
Kids under the age of 4 at this point. And I just really tried to be religious, and I found the most religious friend of mine that I can go stay with when he went and had a honeymoon and stuff. And I just kind of I got busy with the kids, and then I felt like you can see yourself go through these horrible emotions, but you're just telling yourself, I have to just do this.
Just to deny it. Did you still love him at this point? Like, did you feel like you were being betrayed?
I was very devastated when it happened, and I think I started hating him after that point. Because by the end of the marriage, I had no respect anymore for him. It was just like insults would come out of my mouth without even it was just really bad. And so it was.
And your parents never knew about the second marriage.
No. So, and I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. So I could talk to Muslims about it, but not my parents. And my parents live nearby, and they're involved with my kids. So I literally was making up a second life now. So making up reasons why we're doing this, or who's this other woman and kids, like, oh, that's my friend and we're hanging out. And my
Sorry,
parents,
I'm going to ask you some logistical questions. She didn't live in the same house with you, did she?
no, she lived on the same street.
Okay, God. And his kids, they were his kids, so they're your kids half siblings.
Right. Yeah, so so I now was staying to keep things together for the kids' sake. Because I mean, I know if I had broken down and tried to break up, it would be a disaster, especially with like toddlers. So I just did my best to stay. And so my only friend would be her. And so her and I, raised our kids together. And
So I want to go back a little bit. I want to, how did this, I mean, I want to understand the psychology behind this, but how exactly did this gradually come into existence? Before you came together with him, before you married him, did he tell you, and did you believe that he would eventually marry another wife?
Yeah, so I didn't think he would actually go through with it. Again, because I had met a bunch of Muslims and nobody I knew was in it. Again, nobody talks about it. And nobody in the Hizb does it. So I thought, they don't seem to do that. So it was another thing that, and every time it would become a real discussion, the reality of it seemed to scare him away, which happens to a lot of men. Like most Muslim men like joke about it to their wives or threaten them all the time with it. But like really, when it comes down to the real meat and potatoes of it, like it's not easy to have 2 wives, 2 households, 2 families, and like it's not easy.
Finances alone would be a nightmare.
Everything. I mean, we lived fully off of social assistance and everything, so it was just, that's our risk, right? No matter where it comes from.
Yeah. So it is like your like what God is giving you.
Yeah.
What's the English translation for that?
Sustenance.
Yeah. Like God, like Allah's providing for you.
Yeah.
Allah's providing for you through the taxpayers through the Canadian taxpayers, essentially.
Right.
And I should say that that's quite a common thing too, is that men will, in Canada, it's very common that the man will go on social assistance and each one of his wives will go on as well as single mothers. He might be legally married to one of them, but the others he's not legally married to. So they collect as single mothers. So usually the financial aspect of having more than one wife is the deterrent, because a man has to make enough money to sustain 2 households or 3 or 4. But in Canada, it's not a problem. The Canadian taxpayers take care of that for you. They will support your wives and your children that you are raising to hate the West and to eventually establish a caliphate to overthrow all non-Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know families in Germany, like I know families in Germany that were monogamous, so they didn't have multiple wives. But the man was unemployed; he wouldn't work, and they would make so many children, because in Germany they receive money from the state per child. And the idea is, if we make more children, that is good for Islam, because we're advancing the Islamic community by population, and we're also finding the means to survive while we are on our mission to spread Islam here in these lands. So
exactly,
it works in many ways.
Yeah, and just the separation again between us as the Muslims and this country, that separation. So the whole like taqiyya is that where you're allowed to lie to non-Muslims. So, and then you're allowed to steal from non-Muslims. So I knew some people that would like literally steal like criminals, but because it's like a Kafir government,
it doesn't matter.
It's all fine. It's, so, and then not paying car insurance because that contract is invalid in Islam. So they just get around these laws and just,
That was a common thing for everything. It was like, oh, but it's not Islamic, so it doesn't matter. Oh, we don't have to follow those laws.
Allah is my insurance. That's what they say.
Yeah. So your relationship with your family at this point was how would you describe it? Like with your
I mean, I still maintained it with them, and I still wanted my kids to go there. It started getting weird because my kids were getting older, and now we had to teach my kids to lie to my parents. And now that was very hard because it's like, this is wrong. So grandma and grandpa think this is wrong what we're doing. So now it was so complicated. And so my mom would come to me and say, like, they're saying that they're keeping a secret. Like they would literally say stuff like that because they're kids, right? Mm-hmm. And then I would always just be making up stories about what's actually going on. Always making up stories. So it was just like two existences almost at that point.
Were you taught to think of your parents as the other, as kuffar, as the enemy essentially?
Yeah, but we depended on them so much. I mean, there were points. I mean, when you have like low finances and you're depending on parents for childcare, and we didn't send the kids to school because homeschooling is more Islamic, right? So you're segregating everybody. So they helped so much with everything. I mean, our hydro got cut off all the time, so my parents would come and bail us out all the time. It's just, all these reminders that this life is short and we have to be here as a traveler. Any complaints about the way we were living was just looked at like, think about the people in Syria. Like, we have it so good here. What are you complaining about? It's just, it was just like a real breakdown, especially with the separation from the family like that. And now, and then I now had a disabled child, and my co-wife started having children. I got pregnant again. So now I was pregnant, she was pregnant, disabled. I can't sleep anymore. And if I'm upset about the disability, I am such a bad Muslim for not being thankful to Allah for giving me this plight, I guess. So there's just nothing but guilt for feeling bad about my situation. Again, that's a way of staying in it. And how do you get yourself out of that when nobody really even knows what's happening to you, when you've been lying to them the whole time and defending it the whole time? So you feel ashamed. It's like, I made my bed, I got
embarrassing
with it, right? Like,
so how did it start falling apart? I mean, when did you, how did you start? I mean, was it first that you were upset about things and then you proceeded to doubting things and being against it, or how did that go?
So Islam was the very last thing to go. So it was mainly just the last year, he didn't stay with me anymore. Like he just, not being around me a lot gave me a lot more time to see my situation. And not only that, because I had a disabled child, I was out doing a lot of doctor and therapy and stuff. So I was, again, like, directing in the house is so easy. So now when you're out in the world doing everything every day yourself, now you can't separate those worlds anymore. So that's where like little doubts and the stress of being a hijabi amongst this was, that just threw on so much extra anxiety for everything. The way people looked at me, I'm sure I misread everything. I was just so stressed out every time. I didn't even want to go anywhere. Like, it's just.
Did you feel at that point that you were getting a support, that there were non-Muslims, they were supporting you with your disabled child? And did it make you start to feel like maybe these people don't hate me as much as I've been led to believe?
More like they're still on our team, and they're they're helping our son, and they're helping us, it's just be tolerant of our shenanigans, because Muslims like make everything more difficult. Like, you go to a restaurant, like, okay, do you cook pork on the same thing as you cook that? And if you do this and that, and like, I don't, just forget it. Like, I'm not gonna go. It's just so. I started again having more relationships with non-Muslims and depending on them a bit more. And it got to a point where I was left alone with all the kids, and they,
including from her.
Yeah, because they went traveling to a bunch of countries to find a place for us all to move. And so I complained. I said no when they were planning this trip, and I complained about it, and they were like, you're fine. Like, you'll be fine. Like, you can take care of like so many kids. We'll get sisters to come and help in the community. And I mean, I told them I was already breaking down. I was really broken down by that point. I tried to reach out to a couple of sisters. I didn't even know how to ask for help. I'm just like, there's something going on. I don't know how to get help. And they would just give me heck and say, you're stupid. You're stupid you're so stupid to let them do this to you. I just got in shit. Like,
It must have been
letting your husband marry the second wife. You're so dumb for letting them make this. It was just, so then
were those Arab women? I need to know. Those were Arab women that were telling you you're being stupid?
Oh, yeah. I got in heck big time.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, yeah. It's just, then it, when my children started not being comfortable either, when I started seeing that same thing in them, that's when I said, okay, I can't. Not only that, imagining my children getting involved in a marriage like this in the future, I couldn't even imagine. So I had to figure out a way to get out. And I did it by first emailing them while they were on the trip and saying, it's over, go to that house, I'm going to put everything there. And I didn't say it's over that I want a divorce. I said, something has to change. Leave me alone for about a month or two. Just leave me alone so I can sort out myself. And of course, they didn't allow that. And when he came back, he didn't leave me alone, like, ever. It was just, the more you leave me alone, the more I can think for myself. So it was really scary. Like, he would corner me or he would trap me and get me in the car and then take me for a drive and just lay it on me. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're gonna, like, destroy the family. Like, so it was very confusing at that point about what to do. I finally, sorry, I'm trying to think what happened. They called me, told me she was pregnant again, and wanted me to drive her to the doctor or something. And then he came along and cornered me and told me that from now on I'm not allowed to leave the house without his permission. And so now he was going to, like, really lay it down, because that was it. Like, I had been too unruly, I guess, up until that point. And I said, well, what if you're not at my house? Like, what, how do I leave? He was like, well, then you don't leave until I tell you. And then, so that's when I planned. I said, I'm going to get my kids. I'm going to go to my parents' house, make a reason why I'm going to go there for the night with the kids. And so I just stayed, and there was many problems after that, but that was when it finally happened. And
so you had to share with.
But I never meant to leave Islam. That was not ever my thing, ever. It was just trying to extract myself out of this really mess that I made, and I didn't know how to think anymore. It was weird.
It's really, this is why I talk about hijab so often, is because you're trying to free yourself. So they left you with all of these children that are homeschooled, and so you're completely 24/7 with, like, basically a gaggle of children stuck in the house. Then he comes back and there's more pressure on you, and now it's the iron bars are going to come down even harder, and it's just pressure after pressure after pressure. And at this point, you just want some oxygen. You just want some freedom. Step by step, you want that freedom to be released bit by bit. Yeah. And as you take those steps, eventually, if you're looking for your freedom, you will end up stepping into the zone that says you need to leave Islam, because if you're looking for freedom, you're not going to find it here.
Well, I found that every single problem I had and every rule that was enforced on me was in the name of Islam. So how do you separate yourself from it if it's not the religion?
I went through the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And this is why when I talk about hijab, it's like it's the physical shackles. You know, like people think, oh, it's just a cloth on the head, but no, it's a step.
Yeah.
I'm not asking women to leave Islam. I'm asking them to find their freedom and to do what they want to do. If they want to wear it, that's their business. They can wear it. They can stay indoctrinated. But if they don't want to wear it and they want to take it off, then I want to support them in that, because I know that that is letting them take steps towards their freedom and towards their happiness. And once you remove just the physical thing that is constricting you, then your mind will be next to follow. So that's kind of where you were at. You needed to get yourself and your children in a safe place first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take a while before you start to, to release your mind from the shackles. But first of all, you need to get your physical body and your children's physical bodies free.
Yeah. Well, from my parents, we ended up having to stay in a women's shelter for a month because there's no way he would have let that happen. He was threatening, and now there was a restraining order.
Because he knew where you were.
Yeah. And he was threatening, like, take the kids, because Islamically, the kids go to the husband, right? So if I'm trying to leave the marriage, then you go alone and get out of here. I don't want to ever see you again. You're corrupt.
And that's one of the many, many things that keeps women in these abusive relationships. Is if you leave your children behind. I was absolutely terrified. I had changed my daughter's name and changed my name, and even just the thought of it, just knowing everything that I did, just looking behind my back until she was 18, honestly, until I knew that she was going to be old enough to be able to find her way back home and to get away. But I was so scared that he was going to come and kidnap her from me. More than I was afraid he was going to come and kill me, I was afraid that he was going to come and kidnap her from me, because he wouldn't it's his, right? You know how they are about their possessions, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. And that's what scares me too. It's like, they're never going to stop. Like, that's, and if the kids are with me, like, they're going to hell. So
yes, because you're going to raise them
their souls, not just the kids. So that's the battle.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. You don't have to answer it. Maybe it's not relevant. Maybe it's misplaced. But obviously, you were threatened. You were not allowed to leave after that stage. But how was it before? Did you experience violence or anything of that sort?
He never hit me. Before? It was all just verbal. There was lots of lectures. He just. That's just how it is. It's like his way of doing things. Like he won't stop talking until he sees that you fully not just understand it, but now also believe that exact same thing. And he'll ask you the questions and you have to answer it correctly. So, he caught me with my sleeves up because it was so hot one time. And it was like 2 days of lectures. From like, there's something wrong with me that I really thought it was okay to expose my nudity outside. So what happened that you saw that way, that was okay? It was just really, so 12 years of that. And every time he would say my name, I cringed. And I even mentioned it to him. I thought it was funny. And I'm like, why do I cringe when you say my name? It's not like you're going to hit me or something. I thought it was just, I looked at my physical reactions to things a lot as amusing, because my physical body reacted the opposite as to what you're Islamically supposed to accept things and the way you're supposed to see things. So it's more of just like training yourself to, again, like you said, with the more you suffer, the better it is. So you actually feel good to suffer. Like women in full niqab, it's like, wow, just think of hellfire and how hot that would be. So you feel good in the niqab. Like, I heard that so many times.
Even I heard that. So
did you ever have to wear the niqab?
I did it for 1 month for Ramadan one time to try it. And I had panic attacks with it. And especially you have all these kids. So there was a couple times I'd be out in public trying to do things, and I would like rip it off my face because I was like, I couldn't breathe now. And I don't know how these women do that, but I was, I tried. I was trying to be more pious. I guess I failed.
Just quickly, just to off topic, you mentioned your name. We didn't really go into that at the beginning, but I'm just out of curiosity. You changed your name when you converted to Islam,
Right?
to Munira, you said.
Yeah.
How did that come? What was the sentiment behind it?
So after I converted, and then around all these other converts, I also met a lot of other converts, and they all had changed their name to a Muslim name. So it's a way of like really setting a new identity. So having a whole new name, new identity. I did start having an identity crisis about 5 years in, though, because I didn't know what name to use anymore. It was like, what do? I panicked for about a week, and then I thought, oh, I'll just use both. So then now I was starting to have two identities. I guess it like slowly progresses into this strange thing.
Did you choose the name Munira for yourself?
Yeah, I chose it. I just looked at a bunch of names, and my husband helped me pick one. It's just something.
Yeah.
Was it based on the meaning or just the sound of it, or?
It sounds nice. Wasn't too hard to say.
Okay.
Spell. I don't know.
So I know this woman who converted when she married this man, and she changed her name to Sophia. So Sophia, because of the story. I don't know if you know about this story of, you do know the story.
Jewish one?
The tribe of Jewish people, where he killed all the men, and for the boys, if they didn't have pubic hair, he took them as soldiers. And if they did have pubic hair, then they got killed with the men as well. And all of the women and girls got taken as sex slaves. And he chose Sophia after he had just killed her father and her husband that day. He chose, actually, he didn't even, she was taken by somebody else first as a sex slave. And then he was like, no, I want that one. And he took her as his sex slave. And then she fell in love with him.
Of course. Well, he's like,
so he married her, and she became his wife. So she was no longer a sex slave. So my friend who was converting to Islam chose that name because to her, that was a story of somebody converting from Judaism to Islam because they loved the Prophet Muhammad. Yeah. So.
Small correction, by the way. He didn't even. So he took the slaves, and then one companion came and said, "I want a slave," and he said, "Just go and pick one." So he picked Sophia, and then someone else came and said, "Oh, Prophet, that woman is very important because she's the daughter of this and this." And then they said, "You should take her, not him." And then he was like, "Oh yeah, good idea." And then he
give
went
her back.
Give her back to me. So.
Yeah.
I really met a sister who was a sex slave for about 3 or 4 years before he married her.
Like she was Yazidi or something?
No, she converted to Islam through this guy, and he took her as a concubine and proved to her that that's a real legit thing. He kept her in a house.
Okay, so you're talking about like the rape gangs in the UK, or are you talking about in Canada?
Here. Somebody I personally know where I live. Here.
I didn't know that this was
slave because he told her that because he got her to convert to Islam, that now she's his sex slave. She came to me for help several years ago because she thought that because my ex was so like Islamist that her slave owner, I guess, would listen to him because he had 2 wives and stuff. And so when we found out about this, my ex was like, wow, you can't do that in here. And so he tried to correct him, and that caused like having to get restraining orders because like, these 2 crazies fighting each other. And she ended up going back to him, and now I still see her on social media. She has like a bunch of kids now with him, and it's like, oh my God. I see her sometimes walking 10 feet behind him in the car, like every time. It's really bad.
How do you do that to yourself? I mean, I want to clarify. it is not Islamically the right way to, for a woman to convert and then become a
And
convert or
also
sex
convert.
slave.
Muslims can't be slaves.
Yeah.
That's
But
not
this
allowed.
guy's also a convert, and he's not right. Like,
Know what he's
The
doing.
thing is, this is something that Islam creates, basically, even though it is not appropriate under Islam. This is the mentality, the sentiments that Islam creates.
exactly. So it's, you can literally take these kind of things and
Yeah,
do it in the name of Islam.
because that's what separates a Muslim from a non-Muslim. Well, one of the many things, but like that's for women, for example. That's why the hijab, signifies this is a Muslim woman. She's naked. She's protected. You can't rape her.
Right.
But these ones that are not covered, in fact, they weren't allowed to be covered.
Mm-hmm.
They had to be uncovered because they were free game. And so I'm not saying that Islam doesn't allow sex slavery, because of course it does, but it doesn't allow sex slavery of Muslim women.
Yeah.
Well,
So the concept is,
he did it wrong. That's why my ex was correcting him, because he did it wrong.
He's like, no, you got to take a non-Muslim.
Yeah, like you can't.
so you can enslave people through war, or you can buy them from the market, and they have to be non-Muslims if you enslave them. So only non-Muslims can be enslaved. Afterwards, they can convert to Islam, and then you have the option to, you have the option to free them, or to marry them, or.
Well, if this person sees our video, he might comment and give us the evidence for this.
Absolutely disgusting conversation we can be having.
Of this too.
How does it? I just want to ask both of you, actually, because I feel like I often want to repeat this question to people, especially to people who experienced Islam deeply and who are women. How does it feel? I mean, in what kind of mindset are you when you are really religious and you really accept this religious system, these religious beliefs and morals? How does it feel, the concept that, to accept that your husband or your potential husband is allowed to not only have more women, but also to have concubines, sex slaves, and that he will receive superior women, virgins in paradise? So
Yeah, that's his.
Beautiful. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about that?
I asked that. I'm like, so how are women supposed to even care about Jannah if your husband is off with all these women and stuff? And he's like, well, there's a hadith that says that your wife will be even more beautiful than the Huri. Okay, so that's supposed to make us feel better. Not only that, there's like hadith saying that young boys will feed us off of our fruit and stuff like that in Jannah. And we'll be sitting by rivers of wine or something.
Yeah, they're just servants.
So we're gonna have young children feeding us while our men are all with.
Oh, well, okay. Well, then in that case,
that clears it. Yeah.
And an orgasm lasts like 100 years. So, like, how amazing is that? Like, wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure these are not Sahih hadith.
That was
pretty obscure.
So, did you know an orgasm lasts 100 years? Well, in terms, okay.
That's really tiring.
That's like your whole motivation to do this, man.
The concept of the hijab, by the way.
At that point, yeah. Right after 50 years, you'd be like, okay, enough.
Yeah, not to guys though. Guy thing. Like, guys obviously made up these rules. Like, what?
It's just ridiculous.
So obvious.
Absolutely ridiculous. All of it is so stupid.
And we even have Sahih hadith that say Muhammad had the sexual strength of 30 men, and I think about it, it's like no man wants to have that. It's like that's stupid. Like that there is nothing good about it. There's nothing comfortable about that. What? It's
guys that
like constant Viagra.
It's the ones that are very sexually frustrated, though, that would talk like this, right? The messed up ones. So they're the ones making all
and they're the ones that are getting attracted to the 72 virgins and all the other bullshit too, right? I don't know if
makes you that way, though.
Did you always see pictures?
It separates women completely from you and then says if you want them, here, dangle, dangle, you're going to have to go to heaven for it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Excellent. That's why Muslim men are
of people who had died martyrs, where they have a smile on their face.
The list.
All the virgins are around.
Yes.
Like, oh, look, that guy has all the virgins right now.
God.
Like, holy.
There was I could remember. Maybe you remember, Ron. It was very recently where a suicide bomber had gone wrong, but he had with him a list of all the different women that he was going to have sex with when he went to heaven. Like he had it all planned out. Like, I want like a redhead with big boobs. And
Oh my God.
yeah.
I guess. I mean, I was told, like, you know how you're told, like, with praying to Allah for any, like, you're told to pray for everything.
Yeah.
It's like you should pray for anything, like a car, like anything, even materialistic. So, but like God always answers it, right? 3 ways. Either you get what you ask for, or you don't get what you ask for, but he prevents you from getting harmed. Or you don't get what you ask for now, but you'll get it in Jannah. So it's like
that's the one that
how everything's getting answered.
Yep. So
it's so weird. I mean, I was also taught. I was very religious, and I was also taught, obviously, from very early childhood that I would receive these virgins in heaven, and I would have a lot of sex with them, and endless sex, so much sex, lots of sex. And I know when I was religious, since I grew up with a very Western mindset, actually, because I was first influenced by the environment in Germany before I was influenced by religiosity, and before I fell in love with religiosity. But afterward, I became religious. And growing up with that German mindset where we are all equal and we are all friends and colleagues, after I became religious, I still thought, okay, I love this and I love Allah and I want to go to heaven and all that, but maybe it is up to me whether I really want to have virgins in heaven or not, because it doesn't really align very much with my worldview and with my values. But then I mentioned this to somebody, and they said, well, it can't be that you are more moral than Allah, and Allah promises virgins to you. So that basically implies that I am kind of sexually, that I'm kind of perverted. I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're the deviant.
Yeah.
That's always what it is. That's always what it is. Like with Deb, when they were saying, if you have a problem with him marrying another woman, it's your fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was young, and I'd say, how can we revere a man that raped a 9-year-old girl? No, that's my fault for asking that question. I should. Yeah, it's something that, is so wonderful. And if I can't see that, then that's a fault in me.
True. Yeah, I watched some people like try to explain that part. Not only that, the whole thing about like, oh, it was a different time. People always got married that age back then.
And mature faster in the desert.
Yeah. So there's always that.
So what was the point of doubt? You said that Islam was the last thing to go. Do you remember what it was that made you say, actually, I'm going to question my allegiance to this religion?
It happened, my ex put in the court papers that I had publicly denounced Islam. And I read that and I'm like, I haven't said anything about Islam. But I guess because I'm not in hijab, that's me publicly. And then I started being like, wow, he's saying that. That means that I'm an apostate. Oh. So then I started going through that. Then I really started looking, and that's when I started like.
And he made it a possibility almost.
He made me fully like look and reject it completely. Wow. Like it was that, and like, well, now I'm publicly denouncing him, Islam.
So he actually ruined your afterlife, basically.
Now you're going to burn in hell because of him.
He guided me.
My mom would do that to me too. She'd be like, I know you're sleeping with him. I'm like, is that an option? Like I never, how is that even, like, I've never even held his hand, but they assume the absolute worst all the time. But, so you were saying that he wrote this in the court papers. Just curious, why would that be of any relevance? Like if you're in Saudi Arabia, it'd be important to say, oh, she's not following the religion.
Because in the courts here, if you're basically, I found anytime I brought up stuff about religion, they kind of cringe, like they don't want to. So I think he was trying to bring religion into it more than anything. That's how I analyzed it. I don't know.
Right.
Or everything was just.
They don't want to intervene when it's a religious matter, so they just want to, leave it to the people, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder if it's going to come out now, if he's going to get in trouble for breaking the law, because polygamy is against the law in Canada.
No, I have spoken to every kind of person that could possibly prosecute for that, and he wasn't legally married to either of us. So.
Which means it doesn't matter that that actually happened.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what if everybody did that. Like you could have 4 wives,
Right.
not legally married to any of them. How do
He
Mormons
wasn't legally married to either of
marry
you.
anymore than
Yeah.
one? Anyways, so
Okay.
And what about the
Deborah-
fraud of collecting? Sorry, Bridwan.
yeah, again, I don't know. I don't know how I could get. I guess they could investigate to see if there's fraudulent earnings, but
Anyway, you weren't married, so that's gonna be a hard one. Yeah.
right.
Deborah, how long? So to recap that, I just want to ask you a question. How long were you married in total to him?
12 years.
12 years. And I want to ask this. In those 12 years, when did you ever start to regret something? Did you ever, like, did you have little regrets from the very beginning that you started to suppress? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes, I suppressed tons of red flags initially. It was because I got pregnant, and it was like, I mean, that's the first time I had gotten pregnant ever. So, and now it was just when you're told, like, when you practice Islam and you're trying to go, like, you know, as full practicing as you can, red flags and things that would normally alert you to things, like, you're not supposed to regard those things anyway. Like, if Allah's guiding you to something or telling you what you should or shouldn't do, then that's what's good for you. Like, it doesn't matter what you think or don't think. So yeah, there was a lot of red flags, like, obviously with just behaviors and just even I guess the organization. Again, I would just tell myself, because it's nonviolent, it was just very easy to brush away that it's fine, you know.
Did he hit the children though? Or because I remember you were saying that you're related to the first chapter of my book with the tying of the feet.
No, he didn't do that, but I have quite a few friends that also practice that particular thing. The reason I had
Same way.
sorry,
In the same way where they would
Same
tie
way.
the feet.
tied and hit the feet.
can you describe that for those who don't know?
Oh, yeah, I don't know what it is with that type of punishment, hitting kids under the feet with
At
a
the bottom of
stick
their feet.
or something. It's extremely painful, and it's like a form of torture. I remember first, and like not just kids, like toddlers, like 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, like would get it. I don't know, is it because it doesn't show, or yeah, that's like really a form of torture in my opinion. You know, he didn't do any physical anything that.
That's good. He was too cerebral for that. As a with the head of
He
the
was
guy,
very-
he prided himself on being intellectual.
He studied ways to manipulate people in conversations all the time, because that's what you're doing. You're convincing people of ideas. So how do you do it? You got to watch his body language and read this, and
It's a cultist. He's a cultist, basically.
as a member, that's what you have to do. So you have to be really good at that.
At manipulating people's psychology, basically getting them to
You
believe
have to
what you want them.
change how you think, change your concepts about everything.
I found it so interesting when you were talking about your body reacting when your mind was surprised, you know, like how you'd cringe when he'd say your name.
Yep.
And that's because he is able to fool your mind. You're able to fool your own mind, but your body isn't getting fooled.
Right.
And I had that exact same experience. I'd never really thought of it that way until you said it. But it was like, you know, that's in every part of Islam, where you are forced to overcome your innate human responses, and your innate human reactions have to be, you know, superseded by this religion. Even your love for your own children.
Oh yeah,
that has to be buried, and the religion comes first.
100%.
My mom would be willing, and not just my mom, you know, honor violence and honor killings are so common. People say, how can they do that? How can you kill your own daughter? How can you, you know, in Iran, a man, you know, chopped off, he behead his own daughter.
Yeah.
And you wonder, how can people do that? Well, it's because of the fact that the religion comes first. And even their humanity is so buried under there for so long under all of these religious edicts,
Exactly.
it's so hard to find yourself when you come out of this, and it's weird and scary.
Well, it's a form of it's mental abuse, and we all suppress things. Like when you justify to yourself the things that happen and try to explain them as completely normal, while subconsciously you're not really okay with it. You're fighting with it inside, and while you are consciously suppressing what is happening and trying to explain it away, subconsciously it feels disgusting, and it feeds an anxiety within you that is always there, but that you don't immediately recognize, that you don't immediately consciously see. Which is why just very little things, just like hearing your name or hearing him saying your name, caused involuntary reactions that are a subconscious anxiety that you have.
Oh yeah, the first time he caught me out in public without my hijab on, he ran to my car and ripped the door open, and I literally peed my pants, like from out of fear, just the way he looked at me. It was just, I was naked in public, like how dare I? And I don't even remember what the yelling happened. I was just shocked that I had peed my pants out of fear.
So he was angry at you even though you weren't with him anymore, but this
was me trying to leave. I had taken my child to therapy, and he knew, and he had met me there. And that's when I ended up having to go to a shelter and everything, because that's when the threats and get away from my kids, look at you naked, you're corrupt. The kids have to come home, and that's it. And you get out of here.
Yeah. And they use the word naked, and they really truly mean it as naked.
It is. That's what Allah says is nudity. We have no right to say what nudity is. If Allah says that's nudity, we're literally naked. If I stood in front of a window in my house, just dressed like this, it was are you insane? Would you stand outside fully naked and think that's fine? What's wrong? Why are you standing in front of the window? Close, and it's meanwhile, there's nobody outside. You can tell there's nobody. I don't know.
But as a man, I learned this thing. I don't know if you two are aware of this. If this is just something that is rather traditional, because I don't remember a source to that. But this is actually something significant that I learned when I was religious, and it was always on my mind. Which is that if a woman is uncovered or is not properly covered, and a man looks at that woman, then the woman takes on the sins of all the men who see her and who look at her.
Yes.
Burn for all of that.
Yeah. And same with smell. If she has any
perfume,
exactly,
or the loud shoes,
hears her voice. Yeah.
Oh, I was also instructed.
It's victim blaming, quintessential.
I was instructed to talk to, if I answered the phone and it was a man, to have an ugly voice. I was instructed to sound ugly because I could sound too attractive to these men.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Women should neither be seen nor heard.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you want to say to women who, and Yasmine mentioned it earlier, I receive emails quite often from women who find themselves in a marriage. They ask me what they should do, and I just feel like I'm a man. I mean, I talk about Islam, but I don't have the experience to really tell you how to feel and what to do. But you are here, for example, as a living example of someone who converted to Islam, suffered under it for so long, and is now out. So, what would be your advice to number one, to women who want to convert to Islam, who could possibly marry religious Muslim men, and number two, to women who are married to Muslim men and who just want to get out or find comfort again?
Just that there is a lot more support than you think. You feel like you're completely alone, but if you reach out to somebody that can even help you find people, because even if you're broken down as I was like Yasmine, that she mentioned in her book, she just ended up at a hospital trying to ask for help. You don't even know what to do. I went to Emerge. I'm suicidal, I don't know, and I can't even tell the truth because he had 2 wives, so I couldn't even explain the whole story to people, thinking someone's gonna get arrested. And it's just There's help for us, and don't feel guilty or ashamed for being in it. I mean, it's like any abusive situation. I guess you just don't see it that way when it's religious. It's like a steady slope decline into this madness, and before you know it, you're really stuck in it, especially if you have children and you've separated yourself from family. A lot of times people really burn bridges with family, so you really have no one to go to. Even there's Muslims that will help Muslim women get out of bad marriages, because Muslims get upset at these kind of things that I go through. I've had so many Muslims come up to me and, you know, feel horrible that this happened. And I'm not saying every Muslim marriage is like this either, because I know a lot of couples that are great, like they are happy and stuff. It's just, I guess if you're in an extreme situation where you're really fundamental and segregated, you feel alone, and you're not. There's a lot of people out there that can get you out and your children and help them.
So we have a cliche that we say, which is not my Mohammed, because quite often these Western women will be like, not my Mohammed, like he's a sweetheart and he'll never be like that. And he told me he's not even interested in religion. And actually we go drinking and, you know, whatever. And then of course things turn really sour afterwards. So was that your experience too? Like, was he a different person prior, like when he was courting you versus after you became quote unquote?
Is like no courting really, but you see the shift in these men, and because now they are a husband and possible soon father. So I think their fundamentals just come straight back to them. I mentioned on Twitter recently, I had a friend we were partying with these guys, and they're Muslim guys, and she got pregnant, and they decided to get married and move in together and Islamically marry. And he instantly, like from this fun partying guy that's all like years and years, to controlling, mean, yelling, abusive, telling you what to wear and where to go and who's your friend. It's just this instant switch. Like as soon as this weird wedding happens, there's pictures and my friend just like looks so sad. It's like a very sad situation. She's out of it too now, which is great. Like she got out of it. I hope.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Deborah, if you knew or if you encountered a woman now that you know is talking to a very religious Islamic man and who is possibly about to get into a serious relationship, into a marriage with this man, and you basically know what's about to happen, what's about to change in this person's life, what would be a few things, or what would you want to say to this woman?
Good question. I mean, I didn't even prevent my friend from doing it. I would try to explain what happened to me if they didn't know. I try to explain to people about how just the marriage dynamic shifts the relationship and everything. The ownership really, like, it's taken me a long time to just even realize that your husband shouldn't be the one letting you do things. It's just somehow that's still something I'm shedding out of my mind. But yeah, like we're all humans, we're equal. Like it should just be like a friendship, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thank you. Yasmine.
No, I just really want to thank you, Deb, for your honesty and for, taking us through all of your trauma in great detail and sharing it with us all. And I hope that it has been useful for you to share your story, because it can sometimes be really cathartic. I mean, it's not going to maybe feel that way initially. Initially, it just feels really exhausting. to talk about all this. And I also hope that you will be, a cautionary tale for the women that we were talking about just now. And
I hope so.
hopefully somebody will click on this, and it will at least get her to listen to the red flags that are in her mind. Because like you said, obviously, hashtag not all Muslims, he might be a perfectly wonderful man, and you might end up with, all, happy till you both, die together holding hands. But that's a very small percentage,
Usually like something happens where they have kids and then he decides to become religious, or he goes and does Hajj and that's it. Now he's super religious. Yes. Like something you can't anticipate what's going to happen. And usually as these guys get older, they become more religious. Not just guys, any Muslims, they become more religious as they get older.
Well, there's this concept. That's a thing with many Muslim men. Even if they throughout their lives are not religious, they have it in the back of their mind, or they are always taught that once things get serious, so once they actually get into a marriage with somebody and start having a child, then they are supposed to start being religious, at least in a way, or to start fulfilling certain obligations, or even if they're not religious, to tell their wife to observe the hijab, for example. And if they don't do that, then the parents take care of it, and so there's a lot to that.
Exactly.
Well, Deborah, I really appreciate you sharing your story. I really I think this was very enlightening, very heartfelt. I appreciate it so much. I see how you are strong, how you came out very strong out of this, and how you stand your ground. And I'm very impressed with that. And
well, thank you. I appreciate your platform. Like honestly, I felt ever since I left, I felt like the need to speak up because it's happening so much and nobody's speaking about it. Like nobody. And again, I was telling Yasmine as well, I was starting to compile some stories of just women I know personally, and try to compile it into like a series of stories of what's going on here. Like I've had friends, they escaped to another country to get away from the father of their child trying to steal their child. Like it's just crazy.
I would love to support that, actually, if you want to. If you want to gather such stories, if you want to do anything, I'm always here to support such a cause. It would be great.
These stories need to be heard. This needs to be out there. People need to know, because right now, like the example you gave of Not Without My Daughter, like what is that from the 70s? Like that's
all we have.
Knowledge. That's all we have. Yeah.
Right. It's based on loosely off something, but it's
right. Yeah. But it's not the same. And, you were talking about how many women you knew that were converts in your community alone, in your little city alone, right? So this is, these women need to hear this. They need to know this before they take those steps in that direction. They need to know what they're getting themselves into, because they've been lied to. Quite often they're just given some fairy tale, version of Islam. And they don't know what they're actually really in for.
Well, it's all that flowery things you hear. Religion of peace. Women are dignified and honored now, and women have all the rights. And Jenna's
all the rights,
feet, right? And it's good because the man is taking care of you, so you don't even have to worry about certain things. It's just you can justify anything. That's what I've learned. You can literally just justify anything.
But I'm so glad that we have had this conversation. It's been very great. I hope it will help a lot of people. I hope it feels very good for you, Deborah, and I really appreciate it. I would love to talk to you again in the future, maybe sometime. It's actually you're very you really you knew very well how to put this, and I think
thank you.
It has been very
thinking
important.
a lot about it.
Is there anything else that you want to add, Deborah?
No, I think that's all for now. I really appreciate this, you guys. It's really nice to meet you guys and be part of really the insanity on Twitter. That's all new for me, but that's where all the action is. So
yeah.
That's how we reach people.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really appreciate you guys are amazing. And on behalf of all of us that are watching you all the time, thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much then. Thank you, Yasmine. Thank you, Deborah. Yasmine and I will be here again, hopefully in the near future, with other people who also want to share their stories with other survivors, if I may call it so. In fact, if you want to participate in this, if you want to tell your side of the story, you can contact Yasmine, you can contact me, you can find us over Twitter or down here in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you again. Have a fantastic day and stay away from Islam.